car horn. At the sound of the horn, she turned to see Altan, who had stopped his car near her. He smiled and waved. "What happened? Why hadn't you gone yet?" he asked, seeing Esen standing alone outside the police station at that time of night. "My car broke down. I called a tow truck to have it picked up," she said, looking at him with worried eyes and scratching the back of her neck. He nodded understandingly and said, unlocking the car, "Come on, I'll drop you home." Esen first looked at his black car, then looked at him and shook her head in no. Looking at the other side of the road, she started waiting for someone to come. Altan got down from the car and forcibly took Esen's hand, making her sit in the car. As soon as he touched her, she recoiled with shock as if she had been electrocuted. Controlling the pace of her heart, she said, "How many times had I forbidden you not to hold my hand like this?" Her voice trembled with fear and anger. "Why?" He looked into her hazel blue eyes, smiling, and tightened his grip on her hand. She tried to free herself from his grasp like a fed-up fish, but in vain. His warmth and steady presence soothed her frayed nerves. "Do you love me?" "Shut up," she said calmly, and began to calm the storm inside her. "Tell me, do you love me?" he asked. The way she ignored everyone else and only cared about him. If anyone had been in his place, they would have understood the same, he thought. His smile faded slightly as he searched her face for an answer. She hesitated for a moment before finally answering, "I don't know." His heart sank at her response, but he didn't let go of her hand. "Why don't you know? I don't feel the same way you did," she said softly, avoiding his gaze. He felt a lump form in his throat. He had been so sure that she felt the same way he did. Was there someone else? She shook her head. "No, it's not that. I just didn't think I was ready for a relationship right now." He sighed, feeling a mix of disappointment and relief as he didn't see any worry on her face. He could hear her heartbeat very clearly. He held her hand in one of his hands and opened the car door with the other, signaling her to sit. She resisted for a moment longer, but then she relented and allowed him to guide her into the car. For a while, she stared into his black eyes as if she were looking for something, an answer to a question or something for herself, but he was good at hiding everything. He suddenly came close to her, due to which she put her head back on the car seat and closed her eyes tightly. She hadn't expected this move at all. She felt the hot breath coming from his nose on her neck, and the scent of his uniform gave her a different feeling. His hand was searching for something on the side of her waist, and she couldn't help but shiver at his touch. "What's the way, Altan?" she said, barely able to control her breathing. "Belt," he said. "I was just putting on the belt." On hearing this, she immediately opened her eyes and saw him. His face was so close to hers that if she made a move, her lips would probably collide with his. She felt a surge of desire running through her body, and she couldn't deny that she was attracted to him. She held her breath and looked at him blankly. He looked one by one into her hazel blue eyes, then glanced at her lips and whispered softly in her ear, "Breathe." It tickled her skin as he spoke, sending shivers down her spine. She closed her eyes again, savoring the sensation of his warm breath against her earlobe. He started driving the car. Her heart was pounding in her chest as they drove deeper into the night. They both journeyed in complete silence, and the unspoken tension made the trip seem much longer than it was. Although she wished to break the silence, she was uncertain what to say and didn't want to cause any discomfort between them. "My car?" she asked before getting out of his car. "I'll see to it, you go home and rest," he said, keeping his hand on her hair. Without saying another word, she quickly got out of the car and walked towards her house. As she walked, she couldn't help but think about how kind he had been to offer to take care of her car. She had only met him a few years ago, but there was something about him that made her feel safe and comfortable. When she reached her house, she went straight to her room and lay down on her bed. She closed her eyes and tried to relax, but her mind kept wandering back to him. She wondered what he was doing right now and if he was thinking about her too. After a while, she decided to text him to thank him for his help. She picked up her phone and typed out a message. "I just wanted to say thank you for bringing me home. I also wanted to apologize for how I acted before. After sending this message, she felt a weight lift off her shoulders. Had anyone doubted your identity? Someone asked. Not yet, Altan replied, straightening the chains. So why was it so late? Altan's hands stopped at this question, and like a gust of wind, Esen's face passed in front of his eyes, but he didn't say anything in response. Her name alone was enough to reassure him that he wasn't alone. It was the name that soothed him to the core. He had always felt like an outsider, like he didn't quite fit in with the rest of the world. But when he heard her name, it was like a warm embrace that enveloped him and made him feel like he belonged. She was like a beacon of hope for him, in a world that often felt cold and indifferent. Her name was a reminder that there was still warmth and kindness to be found. And for that he was eternally grateful. Alpha Altan, you know you don't need a moon to transform. Gamma Chi Liam, a man with black wavy hair and brown eyes, started asking question after question because of his late arrival. Not getting an answer, Gamma Chi looked at Alpha Altan, who was smiling without any reason. What about the case? He asked again, ignoring his smile. Another body was found, a girl with werewolf claw marks, but there was something very strange about the body. Her body was found in the middle of a deserted factory, her clothes torn, and her skin marked with deep claw marks. They were too precise, too deliberate. The blood had been drained from her body, and her organs had been removed. It was as if someone had performed a gruesome autopsy on her while she was still alive. Gamma Chi raised an eyebrow in shock and said, "What?" Alpha Altan sat down next to Gamma Chi on the stairs in the hall, keeping the chains aside. She was human, I'm sure, but her fingernails, like the other two corpses, had bits of werewolf skin stuck to them, and there were claw marks everywhere. It didn't look like a human had faced a werewolf. Looking at the body, it looked like a werewolf fighting a werewolf. Both Alpha Altan and Gamma Chi were silent for a while and stared off into space. Well, she had been sent for post-mortem. Until then, it was difficult to estimate anything. Alpha Altan broke the silence and asked Gamma Chi, "Did you have any doubts about anyone?" "Vanara Pack from the south coast," Gamma Chi said, and started to chain Alpha Altan because it was time for him to transform, and in this state, he would forget himself. Alpha Altan's pack, the Gravefur Pack on the east coast, and the Vanara Pack had had a long-standing rivalry. But Alpha Altan had never thought that wolves would start hunting humans like this. As the leader of the Gravefur Pack, Alpha Altan had always been aware of the tension between his pack and the Vanara Pack. They had been competing for territory and resources for years, but it had never escalated to the point of violence against humans. However, in recent months, reports had been coming in of wolves attacking and killing humans in the nearby towns. At first, Alpha Altan had dismissed it as the work of rogue wolves, or perhaps even the Vanara Pack trying to frame them. But as the attacks continued and the evidence mounted, he knew he had to take action. Alpha Altan knew that he couldn't let this continue. He needed to take action before any more humans were injured or killed. 500 years ago, there had been an agreement between humans and werewolves that no humans would cross werewolf territories, and no werewolves would cross human territories. However, now this agreement seemed to be in danger due to the Vanara Pack, a group of werewolves who believed they were superior to humans and should be able to roam freely through human territories. The humans, on the other hand, were afraid of the werewolves and saw them as a threat to their safety. They were determined to protect their land and their people, even if it meant going to war, a long war without an end. And wars are not easy, he thought, as the color of his eyes changed from black to dark purple. His whole body was covered with bluish-black fur. His teeth elongated and became fangs, and his hands turned into sharp claws. His ears became pointed and moved to the top of his head. He let out a low growl as he felt the power coursing through his veins. He transformed from his human form into wolf form and landed gracefully on all fours, feeling the earth beneath his paws. Gamma Chi, who had once been human, had been bitten by the true Alpha Alparic O'Connor after demonstrating honesty and loyalty to the Gravefur Pack. He had been turned into a Gamma Wolf. He had stood by his side during the intense war of dark that had ensued, fighting with all his might to protect his pack mates. He had quickly proven himself to be a valuable member of the pack, always willing to lend a helping hand to his fellow wolves. Gamma Chi had been one of the reasons for the enmity between the Vanara Pack and Gravefur Pack because Gamma wolves existed once in 100 years. He had once been human but had become a Gamma wolf after being bitten by a true Alpha Altan, and was stronger than a Beta wolf and an Omega wolf. The Vanara Pack wanted to obtain the blood of Gamma Chi, so they could make multiple Gamma wolves in their pack with the help of Lucian Staren, and could easily control the Gravefur Pack, Dark Shadow Coven, humans, Witchobaven, Strigoi Grave Risen Coven, Blood Moon Coven and Chimeras. But they also knew that obtaining the blood of a Gamma Chi was not an easy task. Gamma Chi was a rare and powerful creature, and his blood was highly coveted by supernatural beings. They had to be careful to plan their approach carefully. Secondly, he was one of the Gravefur Pack members who knew the existence of Omicron Wolf Kendrick Lucas. But after true Alpha Altan was killed, Gamma Chi had returned to the human world, and only the Gravefur Pack knew where he was located. In the eyes of the Vanara Pack, he had died along with true Alpha Altan. However, rumors had begun to spread among the werewolf community that Gamma Chi was still alive and had gone rogue. Some claimed to have seen him lurking in the shadows. Others said they had heard his howls in the night. The Gravefur Pack kept their knowledge of Gamma Chi's whereabouts a secret, fearing that if the other packs found out, they would come after him. They knew that Gamma Chi was powerful and wanted by the Vanara Pack, so they hid him, as they didn't want to risk a war between the packs.